In a small town surrounded by rolling hills and whispering trees, there lived an orphaned girl named Lily. Her brown hair often tangled in the wind, and her bright blue eyes showed both hope and sadness. Lily lost her parents when she was just a baby in a tragic accident. She had been raised by her grandmother until the old woman fell ill and passed away, leaving her all alone. With no family to turn to, Lily struggled to make ends meet. She found odd jobs, like helping neighbors with chores or running errands for the townsfolk. Though she worked hard, it was never enough to truly satisfy her hunger or find a warm place to sleep at night. Many nights, she would curl up under the big oak tree in the park, dreaming of a loving home and a warm meal. Despite her challenges, Lily was known for her bright spirit. She often smiled at those around her, offering kindness when she could. However, some townsfolk whispered behind her back, and the cruel sheriff took note of her plight. Instead of lending a helping hand, he saw Lily as an easy target, a girl who had no one to defend her. Little did she know that her life was about to change dramatically. The weight of loneliness pressed heavily on her heart, but something deep inside told her that hope was not completely lost. She just had to hold on a little longer. In the same small town where Lily struggled to survive, there was a man whose shadow loomed large over the streets. Sheriff Thompson was feared by many for his harsh ways and iron-fisted rule. With a scowl permanently etched on his face, he wore a shiny badge that seemed to grow brighter with every act of cruelty he committed. Instead of protecting the townsfolk, he seemed to take pleasure in punishing them. The sheriff had a reputation for being unjust, particularly towards those who couldn't defend themselves, mostly the weak and vulnerable. He would spend his days prowling around town, always on the lookout for anyone he could accuse of wrongdoing. If a farmer's crops failed, Sheriff Thompson would demand taxes anyway, showing no mercy. When people complained about his behavior, they quickly learned to keep their voices down. The sheriff valued silence and obedience above all. Lily felt this oppressive atmosphere every day. She often heard whispers among the townspeople about how they felt trapped under his watchful eye. The sheriff's cruel actions created fear in everyone's hearts, including the children who played in the dusty streets. It made life even harder for those already struggling. Little did they know that beneath this tough exterior lay a man consumed by his own fears. Fears that drove him to mistreat others instead of extending a helping hand. For Lily and the townsfolk, the sheriff was not just an authority figure. He was a symbol of despair that clouded any chance of hope in their lives. One fateful afternoon, while searching for food in the nearby marketplace, Lily stumbled upon a beautiful loaf of bread sitting on a vendor's stall. Her stomach growled loudly, reminding her of the many days she had gone without a decent meal. Unable to resist the temptation, she hesitated for a moment, then quickly grabbed the loaf and slipped it under her ragged coat. She thought about how it might ease her hunger for a while. But as she turned to leave, Sheriff Thompson appeared, his eyes narrowing as he spotted her. "Stop right there," he bellowed, causing several heads to turn in shock. The vendor pointed an accusing finger at Lily, claiming she had stolen the bread. Despite her protests that she was hungry and had no money to pay, the sheriff showed no mercy. In an instant, he seized her arm and dragged her through the town square. The townspeople watched in silence, fearful of stepping in to help. Instead of understanding her situation, Sheriff Thompson relished in arresting the young girl for theft, declaring it a lesson for anyone else who dared defy him. As he locked her away in the dark cell of the jail, Lily's heart sank. She felt helpless and alone, unable to comprehend how a simple act of desperation could lead to such punishment. In that moment, her hope flickered like a candle in the wind, but deep down, she clung to the belief that somehow, someone would come to her aid. Lily's time in jail was a harsh reminder of her loneliness and despair. As she sat on the cold, hard floor of her small cell, she could feel the rough stone walls closing in around her. The dim light coming through a barred window offered little comfort, illuminating only dust and shadows. The smell of dampness mixed with neglect hung heavy in the air, making it hard to breathe. Days turned into long hours with no sign of food or kindness. Each rumbling in her stomach felt louder than the last, echoing through the silence that filled the jail. The sheriff didn't seem to care about her well-being. He rarely checked on her, leaving her to fend for herself. When he did bring food, it was stale bread and murky water, hardly enough to sustain her. Lily huddled on the floor, trying to keep warm as chills crept down her spine. Her thoughts drifted back to the days when she would sit under the oak tree, dreaming of a better life. Now, she couldn't help but feel forgotten, like a ghost in a place where nobody cared. As tears fell silently from her eyes, she reminded herself of the hope that still flickered within her heart. She would not give up, even in this dark place. Somewhere out there, she believed that someone saw her suffering and would come to set her free. With that thought, she held on to her strength, determined to survive each day in her cold, lonely cell. In the heart of the small town, there lived a blind preacher named Mr. Jenkins. Despite his inability to see, he had an extraordinary gift for sensing the struggles of those around him. His kind heart was well known among the townsfolk, who often sought his guidance and comfort. With a gentle voice that resonated with warmth, he offered hope to anyone who crossed his path. One day, as Mr. Jenkins made his way through the marketplace, he felt a shift in the air, a heaviness that seemed to hang over the people. He noticed their hushed whispers and worried expressions, which stirred his curiosity. His intuition told him that something was wrong, so he stopped and asked a nearby woman what troubled her. After listening to her account of Lily's arrest and the sheriff's cruel treatment, Mr. Jenkins felt a deep ache in his heart. He knew that the young girl was innocent and deserved better than the harsh punishment she faced. The preacher had always had a soft spot for orphans and those who suffered injustice. It was as if their pain became his own. Determined to help, Mr. Jenkins began to gather information about Lily's situation. He spoke to other townsfolk, urging them to remember the girl's bright spirit and kindness. With each conversation, he felt resolve strengthening within him. He knew he could not let this injustice stand. Somehow, he would find a way to reach Lily and set her free from her dark prison. Mr. Jenkins moved through the town with a sense of purpose, eager to rally support for Lily. He began visiting familiar faces in the community, starting with Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly woman who had often shared in his sermons and knew him well. As he approached her modest home, he could feel her concern and sadness. "Mrs. Abernathy," he said softly, "I've heard troubling news about Lily. She needs our help." With each word, he painted a vivid picture of the young girl's plight, urging her to remember the kindness Lily had shown the town. Mrs. Abernathy's heart swelled with compassion, and she promised to help spread the word. As word spread, Mr. Jenkins felt hope blooming around him. He spoke to farmers, shopkeepers, and even children who had known Lily. Each conversation brought forth stories of her generosity and bright spirit. "She's just a child," he urged them, wrongly punished for a moment of desperation. The townsfolk began to murmur among themselves, stirring feelings of injustice that had long been buried under the sheriff's oppressive rule. One evening, a small gathering took place in the town square, led by Mr. Jenkins. With heartfelt words, he called everyone to stand together against Sheriff Thompson's cruelty. "We must be a voice for those who cannot speak," he declared passionately. The townspeople nodded in agreement, ready to take action. With their hearts united, they began to plan a way to confront the sheriff and demand Lily's release from jail. The air was thick with tension as Mr. Jenkins approached Sheriff Thompson's office, flanked by a small group of determined townsfolk. The preacher's heart pounded, knowing this confrontation could change everything for Lily. As he entered, the sheriff looked up from his desk, a sneer crossing his face. "Well, if it isn't the blind preacher and his little band of misfits," the sheriff mocked, crossing his arms defiantly. "What do you want?" With unwavering courage, Mr. Jenkins spoke clearly. "We're here to demand the release of Lily. She's just a child who made a mistake out of desperation." Sheriff Thompson leaned back in his chair, amusement flickering in his eyes. "A mistake? She's a thief, plain and simple. There are rules to follow in this town, and they need to be enforced." His voice dripped with disdain, revealing his unwavering belief in punishment over compassion. Mr. Jenkins stood firm, contrasting the sheriff's harshness with his gentle conviction. But she is also a human being deserving of understanding and mercy. Your actions serve only to instill fear in this community, not protect it. The sheriff's expression darkened as he replied coldly, "Fear keeps order, preacher. If we let people like her go unpunished, chaos will reign." The two men, representing opposing philosophies, mercy versus oppression, faced each other with unyielding determination. The townsfolk behind Mr. Jenkins felt the weight of their beliefs collide in that small room, knowing that the outcome of this showdown would shape their future and Lily's fate. In the days following the confrontation, Mr. Jenkins's unwavering faith and persistence began to inspire a wave of courage among the townsfolk. Whispers of support for Lily spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of hope in the hearts of many who had long felt powerless under Sheriff Thompson's oppressive rule. Families began sharing their own stories of loss and hardship, realizing they had collectively suffered under the sheriff's harsh tactics. One evening, as Mr. Jenkins held a gathering in the town square, he spoke passionately about compassion and justice. "We cannot let fear keep us silent any longer," he declared, his voice echoing through the night. His words resonated deeply with those present. More townspeople decided to join him, revealing their own experiences with injustice and mistreatment by the sheriff. "That poor girl deserves our help," one young man shouted, emboldened by Mr. Jenkins's message. The crowd nodded in agreement, their earlier fear melting away as determination took its place. They realized they were stronger together than they had ever been apart. Fueled by this newfound unity, they organized a march to the sheriff's office to demand Lily's release. As they walked side by side, chanting her name, they felt an undeniable shift in their community, a collective resolve blossoming where hopelessness once reigned. In that moment, it became clear. The preacher's faith had become their strength, inspiring them to stand up against cruelty and fight for what was right. The day finally arrived for Mr. Jenkins and the townspeople to confront Sheriff Thompson once more. They gathered outside the jail, their hearts pounding with a mix of hope and fear as they stood united in front of the heavy wooden door. Mr. Jenkins raised a hand, feeling the energy of the crowd surround him like a warm embrace. "Today, we bring justice for Lily," he announced, his voice steady and determined. As they pushed open the doors, the sheriff emerged, flanked by his deputies. "What is the meaning of this?" he barked, only to be met by the unified voices of the townsfolk declaring Lily's innocence. The commotion grew louder, drowning out the sheriff's protests as they pressed forward. Finally, with their combined courage overwhelming him, Sheriff Thompson relented. "Fine, if you want her released, then go," he spat in frustration, motioning for one of his deputies to unlock Lily's cell. Within moments, the heavy door clicked open. Lily stepped out, her thin frame silhouetted against the dim light of the corridor. The moment she saw Mr. Jenkins and the townsfolk gathered around her, tears filled her eyes. Confusion swirled with disbelief as hope engulfed her heart. "Is it true? I'm free," she whispered in awe. "Yes, Lily, you're free," Mr. Jenkins said, guiding her toward the group. In an instant, the townspeople surrounded her with open arms, their warm embraces dissolving the isolation and despair she had felt for so long. Her heart soared as joy rushed over her, realizing that love and support had triumphed over fear at last. With her release from jail, Lily stepped into a world that felt brighter and full of possibility. The warmth of the sun on her face was a welcome change from the cold, dark confines of her cell. Surrounded by the townsfolk who had fought for her freedom, she felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. They cheered and welcomed her back, making her feel like she was no longer alone in the world. Mr. Jenkins gently placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You are not just free, Lily. You have a community that cares for you now," he said with a reassuring smile. His words ignited a spark of hope in her heart, and she realized that this was her chance to start anew. The townspeople quickly rallied around Lily, offering her a place to stay and helping her find work. One kind woman took her in, teaching her how to cook and sew, while the local schoolteacher promised to help her catch up on lessons she had missed. For the first time in years, Lily began to feel the joy of being part of something bigger than herself, a family formed by love and unity. As time went on, Lily found strength in the support she received. With Mr. Jenkins guiding her along the way, she began to heal from the pain of her past. She started using her experiences to help others in need, standing up for those who felt powerless, just as she once did. Her heart swelled with gratitude and purpose as she embraced this new beginning, knowing that she could shape her own future filled with hope and kindness.